Welcome back to my channel. Always so happy to find you here. I do upload on Thursdays, so when you subscribe, and I hope that you do, please, and bring a friend, you will receive a notification when I have uploaded new content for your view, and of course, my pleasure, and it is my pleasure. I am wanting to first do housekeeping. Today was to be alive with the panel of a few men, 3 or 4 men, regarding their opinions, their perspective as to communication with the opposite gender, particularly in a relationship, and how murky that can become. And we've had to table that just to make these schedules align. So, alignment. Got to have alignment to make these schedules align, but that is forthcoming, and you have my word on that. Okay, so just expect it sometime soon. Today, as you can see, my backdrop, there I am with my, at the time, Wendy Williams colored hair. It was the summer, and I do blondes have fun in the summer. There I am. Um, and with the wonderful Dr. Charles Stanley, who received, as we say, received his wings on Tuesday and is now in heaven. And I am wanting to share my view of him, my short experiences with him, and how a person you could never meet can impact your life so much, or you can have a chance encounter with, who could really enhance, pour into, implant, elevate your life just because you happenstance to meet that person. So, in case you're unfamiliar with Dr. Charles Stanley, I'm going to two things. I will drop his Wikipedia into the description box, but I'll also drop his references to his many books and photography into the description box as well. But my words of describing this great, rare God of man, man of God, God of man. So yeah, he really is a God of men. I guess that wasn't a slip. It was a mint to say that. He really is a wonderful, really is. I say is in the present tense because I believe that his soul just goes on. And we have had the pleasure of having it here at the same time we were here in this Earth's atmosphere. So that's just me saying that. Dr. Charles Stanley is a preacher, minister, founded the First Baptist Church of Atlanta about, I want to say 50 years ago, had an annual Alaska trip that was huge, where thousands of people would go every year. Was a great photographer, loved the outdoor nature where he would take pictures. And it was a hobby that turned into also yet another calling. Many of his pictures were purchased by big companies like Bank of America, Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A CEO and Dr. Charles Stanley were also very good buddies, where they would speak on a regular basis. And so they were often in conference with one another as to how to keep their purpose in business, God loving, God fearing. And so he really did what I call walk the talk. Dr. Stanley also has 2 children, Andy and Becky. And Andy also now has one of the biggest churches. I believe his is also in Atlanta. But by the time I upload this, I'll drop that in the description box. What else about him? He was very human in the sense that, surprisingly, after, I want to say 30, 40 years of marriage, he got a divorce from his wife, Anna, at the time, I believe in 2000. She divorced him, saying he was more married to the church than her. And while she understood his divine purpose, he had a family and children to care for, and he couldn't extract himself for that. That's just how strong his calling was. He was very poured into what he calls his In Touch ministry. And In Touch became a very well-known televangelist TV show. I hate to say televangelist because the meaning of it has changed over time, but he was truly, in my opinion, and in so many others' shared opinion, truly purposeful, truly divine, truly loving, truly desiring to help all of us elevate to be a better example of a better person, despite our own imperfections. Yes? So that's who he is. That's who he is as a person, in my words. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. They'd have a lot more to add. I don't think anyone would disagree with that summary of this sermonic man. Having said that, I'd like to share some of the things that I have learned that stuck with me over the years of becoming acquainted with him. So this is my personal contribution to him. I believe I became acquainted with Dr. Stanley, maybe it was in my first year of college. And I'm still living at home with my grandfather, just my grandfather and I. And it was a habit. It was, no, I shouldn't say habit. Well, a habit, a routine, a regular practice, that's a habit. It was a habit that my grandfather would catch church on TV. He was not a man to go to church, but he made sure I did. And go to church. Get up, get out of here, go to church. And what a man of integrity my grandfather was, because he would give me what he called his 2 bits. Here's 2 bits, take that and put that in the church, in the offering. But he wouldn't go. He would watch it on TV. And at times I would walk through the house and I would see Dr. Stanley on TV, and my grandfather would be watching, saying, this guy's pretty good. This guy's pretty good. So of course I started watching. And my grandfather's right, as he always said, this guy's pretty good. And I began to follow on my own. And when I did finally go away to college, meaning spending more time on college campus, I continued to listen to Dr. Stanley. When I couldn't go to church, I'd watch Dr. Stanley. And he would give his sermons in such a way, he was a great storyteller, in such a way that you felt like you were there wherever he was, whatever story he was sharing. He talked often a lot and would often actually cry of the fact that his dad died when he was 9 months old. And he was an only child. And his mother was what he called a God-fearing praying woman. And she became mother and father. And that while, even at 9 months old, his father died. What do you do? His mother took on the role. But that as a child, a young boy, 5, 7, 9, 10 years old, he'd go to other friends' house and he'd see the presence of a man. He'd see a father there. He'd see a dinner table where they were there. He'd see what he didn't have. And he would often say, why was my dad taken from me? And he was often, in his words, silently jealous that they had what he didn't have. And he would be hurt by that, by just the stroke of God's hand not giving him a father. He often shared these views with his mother, and his mother would try and explain in a young child's way of understanding why his father has gone on home. And he would say, well, why would God do that? Why would God take my dad? As he began to age, Dr. Stanley would wrestle with this. And the wrestling brought him and his mother's prayer brought him even closer, and even closer to conversations with God, prayers to God, meditations to God, or towards this subject. He began to create this acronym that he called HALT, which I still use to this day. HALT. Never let yourself get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Because when you do, you cannot think clearly. The fatigue will hit you. You will not make wise decisions. Halt. Stop yourself. Halt. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And upon this acronym, he would begin to take a job. He took a job at a textile mill. And he began sharing with the other workers there. And they say, "Oh, here comes the preacher man," and they go the other way. He would talk about being an example at work and sharing his stories at work. And while he was so interested in his stories, sometimes they say, "Here come the preacher man, here come the preacher man," and they'd run from him. All of these things that he began to share in his sermons that humanized him, that made all of us realize he's like all of us. We all get hungry for something, not just a physical hunger, but a deep desire for something. A hunger wanting to understand our purpose, a hunger for the right love, a hunger for the right career. Never let yourself get too hungry, and never get too angry where you have an outburst, where I call bipolar beating, where you start just hitting things and out of control kind of thing. Never let yourself get too lonely where you sit and think and sit and think and sit and think and sit and think and take no action. Never let yourself get too tired where you can't do anything. All of this, I'm listening. So as Dr. Stanley began to do conferences and have conferences where he would travel and he'd start writing books, of course I wanted to go, or I would order some of the material. He often traveled with his daughter, Becky, who was kind of like his, I don't know, traveling agent person, their right-hand man kind of person, and his son, Andy, who was learning to be a minister too. Here are some of and I'll drop them in the description box. He would be in response to his In Touch Ministries that would at this time had just really grown and grown. Offer the selling of those. This one that I really love is called Forward by Faith, where you kind of just take your steps forward just by faith. Nothing that you know how it's going to turn off, how it's going to turn out, how it's going to turn around, how it's going to turn in, up or down, but just move by faith. Now this is so old. It's cassette. It's cassette. And I would listen to them in my car on my way either to school or to the library to do research or whatever. This is another one that I really love. It came after Forward by Faith. It's called The Source of Our Strength. Now, this one too was like it's even more. I got this from a conference that I went to, The Source of Our Strength. And this was followed by The Source of My Strength. Now, my sister said, "Aren't they the same thing? Aren't they the same thing?" Well, no. This is more a personal book from Dr. Stanley. Look how young he is at the back, Dr. Stanley. This is the book about his life experience, where this is more ministry, more walking you through the Bible, more asking us to be able to just move forward by faith. So I'm sharing all of that to say this. Sometimes a person could be so important in our life that we meet just by happenstance, and we don't really have the opportunity to know them personally, but we still love them. We love how they made us a better person by their acquaintance, by their walk, by their example, by their talk, by their way of being, by their presentation of their life, by their demonstration of their life, by them being a perfectly imperfect person, and still be top notch in our view. This is why I am sharing my contribution, because now this is me talking. I'm a person that if you have something, I will pour into that by purchasing it. So we call it merch. I'm gonna buy your merch. Um, because you could learn from it. You could learn from it. And I certainly learned a lot from him. And very rarely do you see such a type of man these days. Man, meaning person. We often think to be so good, you have to be so churchy. That is not true at all. You have to be so earthy. You have to be earth relevant, meaning you have to be people connected. You have to be people kind. You have to be people loving. You have to be people respective, people perspective. Um, there's nothing worse than dishonoring and disrespecting and shunning and belittling other people when you're no better yourself, ourselves. Honoring of a person is priceless. So this is my story about Dr. Stanley, and this is why I hurt by his loss. But I will leave us with this, which is how I got that picture back there, and an example for you how truly a good man he is. Now, despite he had all of this, got his own TV televangelist and all of this, this is what he took the time to do that day. Dr. Stanley had a new book out called Courageous Faith in 2016. He was coming here to Los Angeles at the Grove. And oh boy, my sister loves him too. I mean, everybody loves. Please click into the link I'm going to drop in the description just to get familiar with him. I told my sister, let's go. So we found out what day he'd be here. Now, he was going to be in San Diego, and we were going to take a trip to San Diego, but we were unable to do that. So I said, well, let's just go to the Grove. I was to meet my sister there. And the line was long first you have to purchase the book, and then you stand in line to get the book signed. And the line was like snaking all around. We're in Barnes and Nobles. And you know, if you've been to the Barnes and Nobles at the Grove, it has upstairs and downstairs. You purchase the book downstairs, and Dr. Stanley line was upstairs, and it went all the way downstairs, curved around, went out the door. So that's just how loving he is. For him, you stand in that line. So I'm standing in line and I'm texting my sister, are you here yet? Are you here yet? And she's like, no, just get my book for me and I'll meet you there. I'm almost here. It says I'll be here in so many minutes. By the time I got to the top of the line, I purchased book for my sister and myself. I don't know what happened, but the line just started moving fast. The same number of people were in front, but the line started moving fast. So I called my sister. I was like, hey, I'm almost at the top of the line. Are you? She's like, oh, this stupid traffic. And I'm thinking to myself, Dr. Stanley's only here for a certain period of time anyway. So it's not like I can go, we can just wait for you. So now that I'm getting closer and closer to the line, and she's not here. So I'm like, hey, I'll just get him to sign your book for me. So I get to the line, and they're allowing pictures. You have to give his public relations people, your camera, and they'll take pictures for you and give you your camera or your phone back. So there I had done that. And I had no idea this person was taking these pictures like this. I mean, I have far more than just this one. But don't ask me why. But something told me to share with Dr. Stanley. I gave him both books. He says, oh, you purchased 2 books? I says, well, one's for my sister and she's supposed to meet me here, but traffic's so bad here in LA. And she's just so upset she doesn't get to meet you. And we're just, if you could just sign it for her. This man said, let's call her. Yes. He's like, now there's a lie. He said, let's call her so I can say hi. I was so touched by that. I mean, I was so touched by that. I was almost shaking to put my passcode in my phone to unlock it. I called her and she answered saying, I don't think I'm going to make it. And I said, it's okay. He wants to say hi to you. And she said, "You're kidding." No, she's on speakerphone. I said, she's like, you're kidding, you're kidding. I said, no. And then he comes in with his voice and he says, "Hi." And it says my sister's name. I said, "Oh, I hope my sister don't wreck her car." He actually says, "Hi, I'm sorry you're having such a hard time to meet me. Come and meet me, but I wanted to say hello." I never forgot that, and she never forgot that. This is an example of a type of man. To take the time off, to take the moment to even think, to say, "Let's call her." I told him how much I was so touched by that. So, In Touch, his ministries are called In Touch. I just thanked him and it stuck with me. Now, this was back in 2016. Before I left, I shared with his daughter, who was to the side, how touched I was by that and how my sister and I had already planned to go to the next Alaska trip, and we were saving for it. We saved, we saved till, so we couldn't make the 2017 because it was already booked up. So we saved 2018 to go to 2019. So what happened? COVID happened. And all trips were refunded because of COVID. So I thought, okay, we just put the money aside, we'll go next year. Well, COVID lasted for 3 years. And we're out of the pandemic mode and travel is free again. But now Dr. Stanley has received his wings. So the point I'm making by that is you never know when the time is up for someone you want to spend time with. COVID is an odd, weird thing we never want to ever happen again. But it happened. And it stopped the plan that we thought was ever so perfect. The same thing with my sister. How is it that I made, well, I was at work in LA, so I was closer than she was, but I made it, but she didn't make it to actually meet Dr. Stanley. So even our experience with him is different. She got to hear his voice personally. She got a signed book, just like I did. Where's his signature? Sweet, cute little signature. Where's that signature? Just like I did, got a signed book. But I got to meet him, touch him, shake his hand, have a conversation, share with him I wanted to go to Alaska. Seize the moment. Seize the moment. Someone you want to meet, go meet them. Someone you want to speak to, go speak to them. Someone you want to apologize to. My entire channel is about apologize. Just apologize to them. Go do that. You never know when your time is up for that person, with that person, to experience that person, to understand a better relationship with that person. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know if we missed an opportunity for a wonderful opportunity like the Alaska trip I wanted. The Alaska trip my sister wanted. They had it every year. What was to stop it? An odd thing like COVID. So if there is some odd thing happening in your life that's irregular, rise up and just seize the moment. Make it happen. Snatch back that sister bond, that brother bonding, that love bonding, that relationship bonding, because it's probably the most precious, elevating, purposeful relationship you'd ever have. Don't lose it. And I love you. Rest in heaven, Dr. Stanley. Hope you all enjoyed this. I'm going to take this one take, upload it, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Give everybody your love. Give everybody the fullness of your love. And serve a righteous apology. Ain't nobody mad but you. I'm saying that, I'm adding that piece to it because that's the hardest part. And Dr. Stanley talks a lot about that. And that he was holding on to an unchangeable thing from birth because his father had died. And he wouldn't allow everything else that contributed to his life have the fullness to help deliver him from that. If you have somebody who can offer that to you, take it. Take it. Let them love you through. Let them love you through. Don't be egoistic. Don't let your will get in the way. If there's a will, it's in the way. So move it because we never know what we never know. And when the time is up to do so, so do it now. And I love you. Bye.